Now I am, just because of some bad RNG, I'm just going to take a very quick detour and just try to attack the regressed humans once again. Hopefully at some point they will drop the item that I'm looking for. No. Oh yes, there we are. Now all I have to do is not get killed by this stone knight. And you notice that when I retreat out of the range of that miracle, I am no longer affected by it. And now that he's gotten close, I am affected by it. I have the option to retreat. And another aspect of that miracle is, of course, that it's temporary. The moment that miracle subsides, I return to defeat the stone knight. One more thing to note about the visual appearance of this creature is, if you look at the body shape, notice it has the silhouette of the weapon used by the Titanite demon. This is a place which Manus destroyed, and the people of Ulasil worshipped Manus, and when they regressed, they took a shape that was the silhouette, similar to that of the Titanite demons. Now where am I? Let me just find my bearings here, and back out this way. So, the item that I came all the way down here, let us read it. The green blossom. Green weed shaped like a flower. Temporary boost to stamina recovery speed. This uniquely bitter biting herb is sometimes harvested in large quantities, but normally it is an annual plant found near water. That item description is one of the more important item descriptions in Dark Souls. And as we continue on our journey, just keep that green blossom in mind. It was why, at the very, very beginning of the game, when we were in the undead asylum, that I demonstrated the stamina system, which is a system that I'm sure you all know quite well from other games, and it is because it is important to the lore, just as that very important item description is. And so now that we have explored the rest of the Darkroot Garden, we will now go to battle the Moonlight Butterfly that is up here. Notice I came straight down this path all the way to the end. I turned left, travelled straight. I should be somewhere at the back of the garden, but here I am at the beginning. I have looped around, and in a way that isn't natural. I describe this means two things. One is that the abyss I was talking about has an attribute where it is like a black hole. It distorts things and pulls them in towards it. it seems to also distort space-time. It seems like Lordran is dictated to by the laws of relativity. So there we have that. This is also a idea around the Zanzu scholars who sought to control light and time, and therefore seem to have been able to bend space-time and bring us back always to the beginning of the Darkroot Garden. And now, the first summoning of the game, and there is no better person to summon than Witch Beatrice, an extraordinarily important character to Dark Souls. So let's summon Witch Beatrice. Notice she is coming out of brush. She is a source of life. This is solid stone, and yet her summoning sign is able to produce life. And that is part of the story of Witch Beatrice. Now, let's just have a quick look at Witch Beatrice. Notice she has a catalyst, and on that catalyst are 2 feathers. Those are crow feathers, and that links her to the Witch of Izalith and the line of witches. And this starts with the Witch of Izalith, and then she has the daughter Priscilla, the Dark Moon Goddess, who then has a daughter of Velka, the Goddess of Sin. And Velka has children as well, but with minor characters. And Witch Beatrice is one of that line of witches that descends from Velka. And she plays an extraordinarily important role in Dark Souls. Because notice also she has a very nice witch outfit. And a very nice catalyst. But then she has this broken shield for some reason. And that broken shield is a visual representation of Witch Beatrice's story and what drives her. We see in the middle of the shield humanity. Around humanity, we see a circle representing the cycle. And that circle is broken. And that is what Witch Beatrice strove to do, was to finally break the cycle for everybody. And we'll be talking more about Witch Beatrice's story later. But right now, I'm going to ask Witch Beatrice to help me clear out all of these enemies of the Darkroot Garden. So just watch Witch Beatrice as best you can while we fight these scarecrows. No, see there, that spell there. That spell, the Homing Soul Mass spell, that spell was invented by Witch Beatrice. And now that Witch Beatrice has cleared out all of those enemies for me, I can now show you this. The Elite Knight Helm. let's put on this armor set. As I'm not a very good knight, this is once again a set of armor that I cannot carry very well, but it should look familiar. This is the armor set worn by the knight in the Undead Asylum, who gave us the key at the very beginning of the game, and the one that we are thinking about constantly, of course, as we think about who was this knight and what was his mission. Helm of a nameless knight, perhaps an elite knight of Astora. Although he was loath to give up on his undead mission, he perished at the Undead Asylum and went hollow. Those knights that we saw in the Undead Asylum were Knights of Astora. And it is here because someone has pillaged the pillaged items in the Undead Asylum and ended up here in the Undead Garden and dropped them when they were dispatched by the Scarecrows and the Stone Knights. And if you think that might be a bit of a stretch, just remember that if I died here, I would be dropping a Drake Sword, and then everybody wondering how that ended up here, all the way from the bridge over the Undead Berg. So, but there's another reason why it is here, and that is it is here because it is representing a connection. This was sitting next to the Scarecrows, constructs of Menace, and Stone Knights, construct Knights. Were the Knights of Astora constructs? Well, Astora is the home of a famous craftsman who is unnamed when we look at the binoculars. And it does seem like these Knights of Astora were constructs, and there's more evidence than just that. But that evidence is in another place and another time. So I will leave that there. So here we have this boss battle that Witch Beatrice is about to help me with. This Witch Beatrice and the Moonlight Butterfly do have a story, and there is a reason Witch Beatrice has a beef with the Moonlight Butterfly. But that is not what I want to focus on when we enter into this battle. I would instead like to focus on Witch Beatrice's amazing acting skill. By the very dramatic entrance that you saw Witch Beatrice give, she is an amazing actress as well as being an amazing witch. And so, here, she will be playing a role along with the Moonlight Butterfly and the Divine Blacksmith. Witch Beatrice will be playing the role of Velka, Goddess of Sin. The Moonlight Butterfly, atop its tower, will be playing the role of Priscilla. And off stage, the Divine Blacksmith will be playing the role of Menace, Father of the Abyss, in a piece that is told over and over and over again in the land of Lordran, and that is the joy of family. So here we have Witch Beatrice playing Velka, Goddess of Sin, alone and lonely, far below the world. We have, high above, Priscilla and Menace, the Father of the Abyss. Velka, the Goddess of Sin, desperately seeks the man in the tower above. Menace, the blacksmith deity, that she has always been desperately in love with. But there's one thing that stands in her way, and that is her mother, Priscilla, the Darkroot goddess. Notice here, Priscilla fires upon the world from above. And that's why I like working with Witch Beatrice. She has amazing timing. So there we have it. The joy of family. So there we have it. Every good fantasy novel needs a love triangle. And that is what is being shown. In the Moonlight Butterfly battle. Velka was in love with Manus. Manus was in love with Priscilla, and Priscilla loved her child too much to ever love the man that she did. So let's go over that. What is going on there? What is this story that I'm alluding to here? And why does Velka love Menace the blacksmith deity? When Velka was born into the perfect world of the gods of Enelondo, in Enelondo, the city of gods, which is a beautiful place full of beautiful and perfect people, Velka was born haggard, disfigured, and ugly. And because she was not beautiful, the other people who lived within Enelondo all spurned Velka, and they put her aside, and they just wished to forget about her and just wished that she wasn't there. And she spent a lot of time in Enelondo in that environment where people would look upon her with disgust. But there was one person who didn't look upon her with disgust, and that was Menace, the blacksmith deity. He was an outsider, just like Velka. He was a human in the world of gods, and Gwyn had made him a god, but at his core he was still human, and he was therefore an outsider that didn't really fit in Enelondo. And because he was an outsider, he saw he saw the spurning of Velka as cruel and unnecessary, and so he showed her kindness. And when Menace showed Velka kindness, it made Velka in return become obsessed with him, and dangerously obsessed with him, wildly in love with Menace, and she never got over that love for Menace, the blacksmith deity. Now at the same time, Menace had fallen desperately in love with Priscilla for reasons we will discuss later. And what Menace wanted most, much like Velka, wished to form a home with Menace because she was so desperately in love with him. Menace wished to form a home with Priscilla. And Priscilla may or may not have felt the same way about Menace. That is an interpretation that I will leave up to you. We'll tell the story, and then you can decide whether Priscilla loved Menace purely, or whether he was simply useful to her. But either way, Menace and Priscilla wanted to form a union, but they couldn't as long as Velka was around, because Priscilla loved her daughter too much to ever marry Menace. And as I stated before, this is going to be a reoccurring theme in the story of Dark Souls 1, the story of home, the story of union, and the story of family, and the joy that comes along with it all. And now, let's have a look at the items this divine blacksmith here is holding. Just see if we can just see the face of this divine blacksmith looking at what he's holding. That is the face of a man who is going to make all the right decisions in life. So, the Watchtower basement key. The Watchtower basement was where we saw the last of Havel's warriors. The Divine Ember and the Homeward Bone. Let's go through these one at a time before we call this episode. The Watchtower basement key. The basement of the Watchtower forms a stone cell. There are rumors of a hero turned hollow who was locked away by a dear friend, for his own good, of course. So here we see, what has happened here is this divine blacksmith knew what was going to happen to Havel the Rock and his men. And so he took the last of Havel's men and he locked him in the Watchtower to protect him. It was for his own good, of course. And that caused that follower of Havel to go hollow, because he no longer had a reason to exist. His master and the master that he served had been taken away, and so he had no further reason to exist, but he still did. And so he went insane in the basement of the Watchtower. And symbolically, this is a symbol of Menace. The last of Havel's warriors is a symbol of Havel the Rock. At one point, Menace locked away Havel the Rock. Why? For his own good, of course. So, now, the Divine Ember. Now, the Divine Ember, the description isn't particularly interesting, just tells us how to use the Divine Ember. But it symbolizes something very important, and that is the gift of divinity that Gwyn gave Menace. And that is what we are seeing here. All of the blacksmiths tell Menace's story, and here we see the second phase of Menace's story, where he is working in this service of Gwyn. Notice also the rapier on the anvil behind the divine blacksmith. Menace has turned away from Velka at this point in the story as well, and we'll be discussing more of that later. And, of course, the Homeward Bone, the remains of the undead. Linking this symbol of Menace to the Taurus demon, which links us to the old church in the woods, which links us to the creature at the bottom of the old church in the woods. And why has this blacksmith turned to stone? Because he was made of stone once. He also is a construct of Menace and has regressed to his natural form, stone. And so that is today's episode. So we'll call it here. We have explored the Darkroot Garden. Hopefully you found this episode quite interesting and can see how this visual language that we are starting to stitch together can really pay dividends when we start doing it to find the detail in the story of Dark Souls. And the important detail there is the love triangle that is formed by Menace, Priscilla, and Velka, the three that I've named so often, and if you remember the flowchart of Dark Souls lore, are very core to everything that happens in Lordran, and that love triangle is the motivation for a lot of it. We also discussed, very, very importantly, Witch Beatrice, who we will be getting to, and she is a very important character of Dark Souls. We also talked about how the inhabitants of the Darkroot Garden have all regressed back into their former selves, and we looked at some very strange creature designs. So that is everything. In the next episode, we will be descending into the basement for a very tough boss battle with the Capra Demon, where I will probably, seeing that I died to the Moonlight Butterfly, will probably die several times to the Capra Demon. So if you enjoy seeing me die, make sure to tune in to the next episode. See you later. Bye.